Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt. He's on vacation, rocking his mankini somewhere. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. But it's a thing. Actually, he was at the Preds game last night with family, so he's having a good time. And if you see him out and about, be sure to say hi. He loves you guys. First of all, I want to thank you guys for yesterday. That was fun. You guys were engaged, fired up, loaded for bear. We should do that again, like nowish. I'm a big fan of that. I love the back and forth. I want you to tell me where I am wrong. I do not want you to coddle my feelings. I want you to be like, why are you the way you are, and did you eat paint chips? That works for me. If you would like to engage, 615-737-9986. You can call in or text in. Yesterday, I think it was a little after the show was over and Brian was on the air, but I think I got to everybody. And that's one of the things I try to do during the breaks is get on the text line and have the back and forth. My wife has pointed out, as has Dan Mandis, that my interrogation style may be somewhat intense. So I would apologize, but again, a good interrogator doesn't really apologize for that. Man, a lot happens in 24 hours. We go from, hey, well, here's some polling information. Nope, no Trump on the ballot in Colorado. See it. Moving on. Nothing to see here. Everything is fine. Chris did a great job in the last hour of playing clips that demonstrated the vice president is quite concerning and should be in charge of nothing. Again, all of this electoral stuff seems to be coming to a head. There's a lot of interesting things. The things we're going to cover today are several of you reached out on the text line yesterday and said, well, Cameron, you're saying there's a concern that when and if Trump's the nominee, and he probably is, that a conviction would create a real problem. And you've pointed to some general polling. But we think, well, the indictments actually gave him a bump, so the convictions would probably do the same thing. I think that's a fair point. There's some information I got that we can talk about that today. Obviously, the big story is the Colorado Supreme Court. What a joke. It's 200-plus pages of we have feelings. We should talk about that. That's important. I know on the air we've been talking a lot about the immigration stuff. And in the context here of all the different things going on, stuff in Ukraine, Israel, the world is not a safe place right now. And there are a lot of people who don't like America. So porous borders are an absolute atrocity right now. Don't get me wrong, it matters all the time. But the idea that our enemies, people who would like to see us dead, can basically walk across our southwest border. If you tell me, well, that's not an issue, the folks in Tennessee don't have a southwest border, they shouldn't be worried about that. You know, the folks in the heartland, no big deal. This is a border community. No, it's not. It's an American issue. And so don't try to explain this away. Don't try to act like everything is fine. It is not. This is a real issue. And when we're attacked, I'll just go ahead and say it. When we're attacked, not if, when we're attacked, I would be willing to bet money that some of the aid, if not the bulk of it, for that attack made its way across the southern border. It's a heck of a lot more difficult to deal with things in an airport. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that TSA is inherently the best line of defense. I'm just saying there's a lot more hassle. If you can walk across the border, have somebody meet you on the other side and take you where you want to go, man, that seems easy to me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't understand. But we'll talk about that, talk about some of the hard numbers there, not just our feelings on the matter. What do the numbers say? What are we dealing with? And finally, look, it's the holidays. They're coming up. Christmas is coming up. Talking about some weird family traditions, things like that. One of the things that's important to me, at the beginning of each show, because you guys know that I'm with Matt on Wednesdays and I engage on a bunch of fronts. I've always wanted to be transparent about sort of the mix of things I do so that you guys know what you're listening to and you can take it for what you like. My day job is working with a wonderful team at Thanks in Franklin. If you're in the area, come on by and say hi. It's gestures of appreciation to help grow your business. It's things like an Uber ride for a colleague. It's a week's worth of coffee, that kind of thing. That's one of the things I do. I write over at the Tennessean. I'm a conservative columnist over there. You can all explain to me how there are not conservative columnists before. I'm over there now. They treat me well, and I'm on the editorial board. Fantastic team over there. I still write for AL.com, which is Advanced Local, based down in Alabama, and I'm here as a fill-in guy, and love to talk radio and love you guys. So that's where I'm coming from. That's important. One more thing on the deck today that I want to get to. School choice. Not broadly school choice, but there is a organization here in Tennessee that purports to be conservative that is always attacking Republicans and now has decided, well, we should be suspicious about school choice. It drives me absolutely insane when the far left and far right meet to do things that are unhelpful to children. And so I'm going to just hit that one on the head. Some of you guys know exactly who I'm talking about and what they're saying. I'm just going to address it. We're going to tackle that. And those of y'all who are antagonistic to school choice, you should call in and we'll go at it. But as I've talked about with my family being a foster family, wanting to give kids a chance, that extends into education. And so school choice is a part of that. If you like the Soviet breadline model to education, you can call in and defend it. If you're suspicious about changing the Soviet breadline model of education, you should defend it. If you think maybe some different options so that we can do better is useful and helpful, then you and I are going to get along pretty well. But I'm tired of this thing where folks who lose elections and folks who are in a minority position on the right attack priorities of the right rather than saying, hey, we should maybe think about doing things differently. And, oh, by the way, here's some considerations we just want to make sure are clear. No, I do not want the government reaching into public or private education and saying, you must do all of these things. But I don't mind a government program that says, hey, we're going to provide resources and there are some strings attached. Because then a private individual, a private institution can just say, I'm not going to take your money. Cool. So we got a lot to get through and go on. After this show, I got to get out. I'm going to Franklin. We got family Christmas pictures. If you guys want to raid Harlansdale Farm and come and be in my family photos, I'm cool with that. My mom's probably not. She's very strong and will not be a fan. But that's where I'm going to be after the show. So if you want to come and hang out, do that. Message me at D. Cameron Smith on Twitter. Let me know what you think. I always enjoy the back and forth. I want to have those conversations on and off the air. So if you got an idea about a column, if you read something that I wrote and you think, this guy's weird, let's talk about it. Let's have those engagements. Let's have that friction that makes us better, makes us stronger, and advances principles of limited government, free markets, individual responsibility, and the rule of law. I believe that America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth. I don't want to keep it that way. So having those conversations, building up that resilience and saying, it's not enough just to say what we don't like. We got to be better. We got to be awesome. Lindsay, I see you over there on the phone line, and we'll get to you shortly. I want to deal, as we go into the break, the Trump conviction swing and explain what I mean there. Because I'm not trying to convince anyone one way or another. I mean, truthfully, I don't really have a Republican primary horse that I'm super excited about. I'm looking at all the candidates. We'll see who's there by the time the primary comes around in Tennessee. But I think that knowing the different dynamics is really important. And the one that I was talking about with Trump, it was odd because this morning, there was a New York Times Siena College poll of this is folks that saying they're voting for Trump in the upcoming election. And this was actually really interesting. The poll found 24% who said they would vote for Trump in the upcoming election, who also say he should not be the nominee if found guilty in one of his criminal trials. It's really interesting. And I want to read a little bit more from this Hill article, and then we can kind of talk about it. The results, this is a quote, the results remain mostly the same when examining respondents' voting choices in 2020. 22% said he would lose their support. This is again with the conviction, while 70% said he wouldn't. Half the respondents, 53%, believe it's unlikely that Trump will be convicted. 35% say it's likely he will be convicted. And so this is what's really, and again, you guys know how these surveys work. It's 1,000 registered voters, margin of error 3.5%. But what we're seeing, and this has been pretty consistent. This is actually at 22%. That's a bump up. But like I said, Trump's support in the primary has been very consistent. It has just been steady. So is this, that if he's convicted in one of his criminal trials, he gets dinged. That's not unreasonable. I mean, I understand why people say, well, an indictment's one thing, but a conviction by a jury of peers is another. And that's the concern point, right? Like, that's the challenge that is down the road that voters need to be aware of when they cast their primary vote is, okay, we're in, this is the risk. That's it. I'm not interested in sort of beating that dead horse, but to the point of, hey, what's this? What are you talking about, Cameron? You know, why wouldn't people just say, okay, he was indicted, he got a bump, he's convicted, he gets another bump? Because, look, we know you can indict a ham sandwich. We've seen that. You know, when a defense has an opportunity to strike a jury, when that jury has to evaluate the law and the facts of the case, it's different. In any case, whether it's Hunter Biden, Donald Trump, whoever, like a conviction by a jury in a criminal case is a different animal. And and the challenge is it hits enough support, it drops Trump's support some, but the real area is you lose those independent voters. I know nobody likes the idea. And somebody yesterday made a great point. There are no independent candidates. True, because they're not enough to elect. And this is where, like, a lot of real strong fiscal conservatives in a state like Tennessee are like, why can't we get who we want? Well, the independent voters can't either. So they just kind of tip things, and they're willing to vote for Democrats, whereas, you know, a lot of conservative base voters just simply aren't. So that's what we're talking about. It's a thing. You don't have to like it or not. You just need to be aware of it when you cast your vote. And if you say, hey, I'm one of the 70%, I don't really care, fine. Just know that there's another 20 to 30% they're like, I may care, and then there's a chunk of that that's just not going to vote for him if there's a conviction. That's probably enough to help out Joe Biden. So, welcome to politics. It's tons of fun. I do want to talk about the Colorado Supreme Court decision in detail when we come back on the other side of the break. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the biggest decisions people have to make in retirement is how to take Social Security. You'll get all kinds of workshops about that, and you'll see all kinds of things about that particular topic. Because Social Security, for some people, it might be a third or even more of their income in retirement. So you want to get this decision right. Well, how do you make the decision? Well, one of the things we look at, there are programs we use. This is one of the simpler programs that we use right here. And I want to just show you how it works and how it actually unravels some of the misconceptions we have about Social Security. So we have two people here, they're age 60, and they're looking at filing for Social Security. One person has a retirement benefit of $2,500. That is their main benefit from Social Security at their full retirement age. The other one has a $500 benefit. And what we can do here, which is kind of cool, is look at this and say, okay, well, what if we have this person has that life expectancy and that person has that life expectancy there? And then what we do is we assume a certain cost of living increase in Social Security. What would be the optimal for taking the benefit where they get the most benefit or the most bang from their buck? And where we see the star, that shows that we would have the best benefit. Now, this is one person finally at age 67, the other person at age 70. Well, a lot of people think, well, I retire, I have to take Social Security at the same time that I retire, and that's not necessarily the case. As you can see here, one may take it at one age and one may take it at another, even though they're the same age right now. Now, the other thing we can do is say, well, what if I took it early? What if I took it at this particular age right here, where one person's 65 and the other one's 65? You can actually see how much it could cost in benefits. When we do this, we can see how much it might cost us and how much it might affect us negatively to do that. Now, the other thing we can do is we can play around the life expectancies, and we say, well, if this person lives to that age, now the cost is $187,000 in this particular example, taking it at that age right there. So you can see, based on your own life expectancy, and typically people will say, well, what did my parents live to, and come up with that type of data. So this is just part of the financial planning process that we use at Paul Winkler Inc. If you want to know more about what we do, you can get a free 15-minute phone call at our website, paulwinkler.com. We do financial planning, full financial planning. We do investing education and investing. We actually help people through those decisions, helping them set up their 401ks and those types of decisions, as well as risk management. But we don't get paid on commission. That's what makes us so different from other firms out there that do what we do. So if you want to find out more, go to paulwinkler.com.
Welcome back, you plebes, or at least that's what 4 members of the Colorado Supreme Court think. I have the decision pulled up in front of me. They do not take it lightly in their review of the law. However, Donald Trump may not appear on the ballot in Colorado. I mean, come on, folks. This is the kind of stuff that we should just, I want to be real careful in how I say this. When we see this type of elitist legal wrangling, we can call it lawfare, sort of like warfare with the law, that removes the choice of the people. We should just reject it. Period. But here's why. Because I don't care who your favorite candidate is. It does not matter to me. It could be the dog catcher, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. Doesn't matter to me. You should have that choice. You should have the choice, period. End of discussion. When I see political parties kick people off the ballot, I lose my mind because I want to give voters choices. Because anytime there's a small group of elite who think they know better and they should save us from ourselves, We should fight them. And I want to be clear about that because I don't take that lightly. I think we're too angry about a lot of stuff we shouldn't be angry about. But this one is one where, no, this is nuts. This is absolutely insane. And we should reject it. And we should say, no, we're not going to do this. And Colorado's Supreme Court, there's 7 of them. This was a 4-3. I can tell you the likelihood that this stands extremely low. The Supreme Court's going to come in here and say, no, they're going to contrast history and say, okay, the Civil War was one thing. This is an individual accused of specific actions without any legal adjudication finding him guilty. And you're basically saying, well, we kind of sort of find him guilty of a thing, but not criminally, but enough that he can't appear on the ballot. And that, to me, is this, y'all have all heard it. Democracy dies in darkness. Fill in the blank is the threat to democracy. If Donald Trump is elected, we will never have another election. Thank you, Liz Cheney. All of that is not true. And again, this is coming from me, who I am not on anybody's presidential team right now. There are people I like. Not a huge Trump fan, but good grief, man. The idea that, well, do y'all all remember when he subverted democracy by staying in the White House past his term? Do y'all remember that? No, you don't remember it because it didn't happen. Well, you know, he said that he would be a dictator for a day. And that's disqualifying for office. What? Like, until somebody has done the things and been adjudicated of doing the things, and we have that in process right now. This is what I love. I actually love the charges against Trump. Here's why. Not because I've adjudicated the outcome, but because I believe that we should have that trial. Did he do the things that he's accused of? Are the things he's accused of actually against the law? And if they are not, then he should be exonerated. And if they are, he should be found guilty by a jury of his peers. And so we can freaking move on. Because what the left wants is, well, we don't want to go through that whole thing. We just want to say that he's bad and guilty and we can't do anything with him and democracy will die because of him. And Trump supporters, on the other hand, are like, all of the things you say are completely without merit and there's no justification whatsoever. Where I fall on this is like, let's have the trial. He's been indicted on charges of subversion and whatever else, mishandling serious classified documents. Have the trial. Have the outcome. Have the appeals and move on. And I know that takes time. But that's how we decide these things, right? We don't do like this weird, well, we want the result without the actual trial. And that's essentially what we're seeing here in Colorado is folks saying, we didn't like the way that he behaved during the January 6th stuff, and that was a rebellion or an insurrection. I get that. I understand why you might feel that way, but that's not how we decide things. You charge somebody with a crime, then you make your case, they make their defense, and a jury decides. Sweet. And that means folks that are saying, well, no, we can't ever get fair trials. Politicians can't. I want you to think about that. Think Hunter Biden can get a fair trial? How about Joe Biden? Donald Trump? Don Jr.? If the answer is that nobody in politics can get a fair trial, we have a massive problem, and we need to talk about how we're going to fix it. I still believe that a jury that struck, that the prosecution and defense both have opportunities to say, hey, this panel is fair. And, oh, by the way, if there's something funky there, there's an appellate court beyond that. And in some instances, an appellate court beyond that. I still think that that legal system can work. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but dang, it's a pretty good system. And so I think we should have it out. That's how we decide this. And to suggest otherwise is basically saying, I know better than you, and I can just decide for you. And then if it's not criminal, guess what it is? It's civil or it's political. And you know how we decide political things? Elections. So folks need to be on the ballot. They need to have the capacity to draw votes. And we should not deny that for anything. We shouldn't deny it on the party level. We should say, hey, you want to be a Republican? Guess what? Put it up there. Now, the other person can say, well, you haven't been a Republican for very long, or you voted or contributed to a Democrat, or you did. They can say whatever they want. But the idea that we would preclude a vote of the people in Tennessee and Colorado in the United States because we don't like things, that's some elitist garbage, and we should fight that. We should say absolutely not. And I saw one of my favorites, Joy Behar, up saying, well, this is necessary because basically the people can't decide. That kind of crazy mindset of what if the people get it wrong? You're basically saying my perspective derives and everyone else has to suck it up. And that is un-American. That is not a freedom-loving perspective. And so I don't care what your perspective is. If you're forcing it on other people by means other than the due process of the legal channels, you need to stop. And I'm going to do everything to try to stop you too, because I believe that liberty has to matter that much. Obviously, I'm on a roll. I am fired up about this one because this is dumb. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7.
Today's show happened because I saw a comment. He said, why don't you do something on doves and dove fields and how to find them and things like that. So
Yeah. All right.
good idea. It's past the opening day, but like you said, it can work.
Yeah.
Because the season is long. It runs for 90 days, and there's 3 segments, so we're going to cover all that today. Let's rattle off the season. September 1 through September 28th is the first segment of Dove, and then October 14th through November 5th, and then December 8th through January 15th. 15 is your bag limit. So September 1 is opening day, and that's at noon in Tennessee.
September 1st has been one of those days. I mean, you'll see guys. I mean, they'll take off work, have big cooking and getting together with friends, and it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
Historically, it's a huge social event. I'd say the majority of the hunters probably hunt opening day, opening weekend, and then won't pick up a shotgun until next year. So,
we have 2 other segments besides this one. Running in October, and then even all the way through January 15th. There's a lot of opportunity throughout the year.
On our website, tnwildlife.org, on our homepage, you can click the button there to dove hunting info and fields is what the button's titled. It's got all the information on dove hunting. You can find the fields there. So let's talk about how to find a field. You click on Region 2, it pulls up the options that are available, and get down to Bark Camp Barrens, and you see it's open statewide. So the hunting's not over there. There's still opportunity. Even though we had a big opening day, let it die down a little bit and get back in there. You're going to have some good hunting, I think, there, sounds like, anyway.
Welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. You can join the conversation, 615-737-9986, at D as in David, Cameron Smith on X. I don't know that anybody uses Threads, but if you do, it's the same thing. Honestly, it's a lot to use all the different social media networks. I don't really get all of that. I'm getting old. A couple things on the Super Talk text lines that I think are important to say. Several of y'all have asked, well, can't folks in Colorado just write in Trump? Write-in campaigns just aren't usually successful. There are some rare exceptions, but if you take somebody off the ballot and then expect everyone that was going to vote for them to write them in, you'll see a radical drop-off. So it is an extreme measure to strike somebody from the ballot. I know it sounds weird, but basically people are looking at their options and picking from their options. Most people don't go in and say, hey, I'm going to click on that one. Or saying, I'm not going to click on one of these. I'm going to write in somebody else. So I hear you. That is a thing. It's just not, it would be tremendously unfair to Trump's candidacy to say, don't worry, you're kicked off the ballot, but people could write you in if they really, really like you. That's not a thing. I do want to talk a little bit about the legal system and fair trials. Y'all have raised some very good points, and I want to have that discussion. I want to get to Lindsay first. She's been real patient. So, Lindsay, can you hear me?
I can.
What do you got?
Well, I've got an 11-year-old here who is on Christmas break who wants to tell you his favorite host and his least favorite radio host.
Okay.
And why.
Okay, I can suffer through this.
Okay, come on, JoJo.
My least favorite is Mark Levin because he yells.
He yells. Okay, that's fair. Who's your favorite?
Jesse.
Oh, okay, and why?
Jesse Waters. Because every time he explains something, he explains it through, and that way everybody can understand him.
Yeah, okay. I like that a lot. And what was your name?
Joseph.
Joseph. Man, that's a strong name. Well, Joseph, I appreciate you calling in. That's awesome, man. I'm glad that you got, you know what you like and you don't like. My boys, they have thoughts too. They when I get off there, they tell me how I did. And so I'm glad that there's a lot of kids like you paying attention.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much for the call, man. I appreciate it. Can you have a good day for me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, have fun, and we'll talk later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, the 11-year-old demographic, awesome. That kid's going to know taxation is theft. I'm excited about this. It does bring me to a point. Don't just assume your kids aren't going to understand any of the things that we talk about as adults. Talk about it with them.
We also need to make sure he understands that all gun laws are infringements too.
Yeah, the Second Amendment thing's really important. But I talk about it with my boys. The boys in my house are 14, 12, and 9. And we have different discussions about things, but they'll tell you that liberty is freedom plus responsibility. You know, I had a discussion. You know, Joseph, my boys have asked if they can come join me, and I think I'm going to bring them in, if not this week, next week, and say, I want to know what they think. Because I understand that folks who can't vote kind of sort of feel a little detached from the process, but I think it's important that those conversations are engaged and that we're mindful of the impact that our adult conversations have on kids. And what Joseph was saying about Mark Levin yelling and Jesse Waters explaining things pretty clear, those matter, not just to kids, but to everybody. There's a lot of folks that, you know, they hear things certain ways. They get all, I can't listen to it anymore. I'm out.
What are you, a dope?
Yeah. I've been called that a lot in other names. Some of them are very hurtful, but thankfully all of those people take their ball and go home very quickly. And other people bring new voices to the table, and that's how radio works. As far as the Colorado stuff, again, anytime you're explaining stuff in that much detail, you're probably losing because you don't have a good anchor argument. And I've been going through this opinion and basically saying, Donald Trump, you committed an insurrection. You can't be on the thing. You can't be on the ballot. No. Again, we should reject this. We should say no. It's going to be appealed. My guess is that Trump is in fact on the ballot, because I don't actually think this is a particularly close question for the Supreme Court. I mean, it would not surprise me at all if this was a unanimous or nearly unanimous decision of saying, because we don't want to get into this practice where state Supreme Courts, state entities are essentially denying voters choices because they don't like it. Because I'll use Tennessee as a good example. I could see a world in which Tennessee said, well, because of some of the things we're seeing with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden not being truthful about that relationship with Hunter Biden in terms of his business and these things, well, we don't have a criminal conviction. We don't have a impeachment and removal from office, but let's take a vote and decide we don't like Joe Biden. And then Joe Biden's not on the ballot in Tennessee. Now, is Joe Biden going to win Tennessee? No, he's not. But to say that he cannot be on the ballot in Tennessee is a different animal. And so the idea that we could have essentially partisan disenfranchisement depending on the depth of voting preference in a state is silly. And on the super text line, you know, some of y'all saying, well, these judges who voted this way should be taken and arrested and tried for treason. We got to stop this notion of we can't let our legal processes work. Like, these judges got it wrong, and we have an appeals process for that, and it will be appealed, and the record will be set straight. It doesn't always work in our favor, but the process has to work. And several of you have said this, and I hear you, that, well, the legal process is broken, justice is broken. Bell, do you have thoughts?
Yeah. Remember when Adam Schiff said he had seen evidence of Russian collusion with his own eyes, but he never turned it over to the DOJ or told them where it was? Clearly, he was protecting Trump by not doing that. So I would consider him an accessory to the insurrection. So therefore, he's not allowed. He has to go.
Sure.
Am I doing this right?
Yeah. You see how weird it gets and how fast it gets there. And so that's why we need to take a chill pill on the let's prosecute everybody all the time. Let's go after everybody. Like, we need to let the process work. And I understand, particularly with DOJ, there have been things that have happened where things have clearly been politicized, and it has undermined our faith in those institutions. Yours, mine, everybody's. I get that. We got to figure out how we fix that, right? And it cannot just be, well, the way we fix it is by getting what we want. We have to fix it by fixing the system and making sure justice is, again, relatively blind, and impartial. Like, that's what we should want. And so when we've prejudged the outcomes of all the things on both sides, that's bad for our country. And so this is a good example of, it might make us feel better to be like, well, the Biden crime family and they're corrupt and all this stuff. Like, okay, fine. And then when it's, Trump's indicted for crimes, well, no, he's clear. This is a political sham. I mean, you can see how this works, right? Like, things that you don't like are politicians you don't like. Everything that's negative towards them is fine. And politicians you do like, anything that's negative for them is a political attack. My point is, we've got to have a system that can sort these things out in the real world, because the political space is not the real world. Like, we should know that by now. That's fair. That people say political things all the time. Adam Schiff being a great example. Well, this Russian collusion, well, it wasn't there. Was Russia attacking, like, in malign campaign? Sure, but the idea that the Russians changed votes is not true. Schiff knew it wasn't true.
The Russians have been interfering in our elections since probably 1925,
right,
or so. But we finally got hip to it. I mean, come on.
Right. This, to me, there's a big difference in saying these what we call malign campaigns. Like I said yesterday, I read a national DNI report about China, Russia, Iran, Cuba, and others basically trying to amplify dissension and make us look like crazy people. I think we already do a pretty good job of that. I don't think we need their help. But the idea that they are picking and choosing our elections, that wasn't true in 2016. It's not true in, the report said, 2022. Like, there's a big difference in influence in changing election results. But Schiff knew that. Like, Adam Schiff absolutely knew this was not real and was like, but I have evidence. I super double secret evidence I can't tell you about, and I can't tell anybody because it wasn't there. And so the political space, words are cheap. The legal space is a different arena. And we got to realize that. And if the answer is, well, we don't have judges that are honest. Okay, well, then we need to find judges who are. If it's, well, you can't get a fair trial in D.C., well, that seems odd, because if it's no one can or just politicians can't, how that works. What about Florida? Can you get a fair trial? Where can you get a fair trial? And if the answer is nowhere, that's the wrong answer. Like, because you're basically telling me that no matter what the results are, they're not real. And that we have to have a criminal justice system that works, that we can depend on the results, because I don't want to be sending people to jail who don't need to be there, and take it out of the political context. Like, we need a system we can depend on. And if we're not getting it, we need better politicians to build a system that we can depend on. And that's what we need to work towards. And it stinks. I don't want to be in a situation where I can't trust that folks are going to get a fair shake. But if you're telling me that nobody can get a fair shake, we can't just stay there. That can't be the right way. And I do have faith that the appeals process can ultimately work. That even at the trial level, if there's weird stuff, that there's levels of appeal and still judges who look at things through the lens of what does the law say and what are the facts. I don't always agree with all the decisions, but I think they can be fairly made. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, in Tennessee, we've got a lot of good judges. At the appellate level, good judges. It doesn't mean everybody agrees with me politically, but I can trust, generally speaking, that we're going to get some positive results.
You're a lawyer.
Are you surprised today, too, or just yesterday?
Does your wife know this?
She does.
Oh,
we discussed this yesterday, Belle, that my wife repeatedly says, stop lawyering me. I do not want to have this cross-examination about dinner. She did that to me yesterday. I'm like, what are we doing for dinner? Are we doing this again?
Well, then maybe you should stop lawyering her.
Yes, I think you're on to something, Belle. I should probably do relational counseling during the breaks. I think that's reasonable. But we need to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy on Super Talk 99.7. Welcome back. Winding down our first hour. A couple of things that you guys have said about the fairness in the judicial system. One, the comment of, well, this works for Democrats and progressives, but the legal system doesn't work for Republicans and conservatives. We've won on guns repeatedly. We've won on abortion. I mean, we won on some election stuff with Citizens United. I mean, there are a lot of demonstrable legal wins for Republicans, and we can go through different legal verdicts that conservative folks prosecuted have been exonerated. I mean, I don't think that's a fair take to say that it only works in one direction when I can just off the top of my head point out how that's not true. But I take the point that, okay, well, what about a venue in D.C. or Fulton County or Florida? I get that. But again, if there's something improper here, and I'm not talking about political feels, I'm talking about as a matter of law, Trump's lawyers and frankly anybody's lawyers have the opportunity to appeal that and say, well, this venue is not proper. These charges are not filed in the correct place. I mean, the election stuff that happened on January 6th, well, guess where that happened? I think that forum probably is appropriate. You can say you don't like it, but the legal process works as a matter of law, not as a matter of politics and feels, and it shouldn't. And so I think we got to be careful in that. Look at reality. Look at what some of these things actually are as opposed to looking at what you see on X and how people are just saying, well, this isn't fair. This isn't okay. I get it. But when I've asked you guys, some of folks have pointed out Fulton County and D.C. When I ask you about Florida, you're like, well, Trump lives there, so I guess that's probably fair. Okay. But that's like saying, well, if I do something in Massachusetts, that I can't get a fair trial there because I'm a conservative Republican from Tennessee. I mean, I still suspect that they don't have a corrupt legal system in Massachusetts and that I could get a fair trial and have representation of counsel that if I shouldn't be charged there for a crime, then we'll get it dismissed to a different forum. So, like, I get it. Okay, and I understand the idea of rose-colored glasses. But some of y'all have poop-colored glasses. And y'all are just like, everything is awful. Nothing is fair. Nothing is good. Nothing is just. Nothing will work. I mean, yeah, of course, I would rather have rose-colored than poop-colored. But there has to be sort of a meet in the middle, right? Like, my goal is not, I am in no way telling any of you that you're not right to be concerned. That you haven't seen things with your eyes and heard things with your ears that suggest, hey, maybe some of these political operatives at the Department of Justice aren't on the up and up. Like, I know you've seen that. I've seen that too. So for me to try to suggest to you that you can't take that and say, I don't have a lot of confidence here, that's not fair. I'm not going to do that to you. But my question is, it's sort of like letting those people, the Sturzoks and the folks like that, say that we can't have confidence in justice because those people were horrible and partisan hacks. Like, I don't want them to be able to take away our system from us because it belongs to us as the people. And so my question to you is, how do we get back to that? And I'll be open. This is one of my critiques with Trump. Is Trump's like, well, they're weaponizing the justice system. I'm going to weaponize the justice system. No, the answer is we can't and shouldn't weaponize the justice system for anybody. And that's a really dark perspective to be like, well, really the goal and how we fix it is to win office and punish our political enemies with the law, whether there's a crime committed or not. That's not a thing. We should continue this conversation. You guys are being great. There's a lot of engagement again. I really, really appreciate it. Keep it up. We're going to talk immigration, school choice, the conservatives siding with the likes of Heidi Campbell. Makes me wonder whether they're conservative or whether There's something else. That's just me, though. We've got 2 hours to go, and we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm Cameron Smith on the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
From ABC News, I'm Brian Clark. President Biden in Wisconsin to tout the economic policies of his administration.
Increase the middle class. The poor have a shot, and the wealthy still do very well. The middle class does well, and we all do well. That's what we call Bidenomics.
As he arrived, the president weighed in publicly on the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to bar former President Trump from the state's primary ballot, finding he violated the Constitution's insurrection clause.
Just after he stepped off Air Force One as it landed in Milwaukee, President Biden told ABC's Karen Travers his predecessor is an insurrectionist. In fact, Biden called that self-evident.
Now, whether the 14th Amendment applies, I'll let the court make that decision. But he certainly supported an insurrection. There's no question about it.
Donald Trump's campaign is expected to appeal the Colorado ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court, arguing judges shouldn't take the choice away from voters. Stephen Portnoy, ABC News, Washington.
There are reports suggesting a prisoner swap between the U.S. and Venezuela is in the works that could involve freeing some detained Americans. Secretary of State Antony Blinken would only say there's a lot of work going on.
We hope to have some good news to share probably later today.
Also hope Israel and Hamas could be closer to another ceasefire. The top leader of Hamas took part in talks today in Egypt. Border Patrol says it is struggling to deal with the influx of migrants who are seeking asylum along the U.S.-Mexico border.
In camps that have developed along the U.S. side of the border and mainly remote places, the influx can be seen. Migrants camped out and waiting to be processed to claim asylum. The Border Patrol says it made about 10,500 apprehensions along the southwest border on Tuesday. That's down slightly from the 11,000 on Monday, but still at historic highs. The highest area being the Del Rio, Texas region, where about 4,400 apprehensions were made on Tuesday.
It's ABC's Alex Stone. You're listening to ABC News.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for listening. You guys are what makes the show. Matt Murphy loves you dearly. So do I. In the words of Donald Trump, even the haters and losers. Much love. We've been talking about the Colorado Supreme Court case, the ballot, the legal system. How do we restore confidence? And you guys have made some great points. How do we deal with the fact that a lot of our institutions have been hijacked? You've pointed out that, hey, conservatives have been asleep at the wheel in higher education. Yes, amen. Absolutely right. The justice system, you want to say they're asleep at the wheel? I think you're probably right. And here's what I'm getting at. I said this yesterday, and I really mean it. That we either have thermostats or thermometers. We have folks that can change the temperature or folks that tell us what it is. And so much of the political class is just lying to you and lying to me because we say, well, we don't like a thing. And they say, we too do not like that thing. And then everybody feels good and we go home. That's how our southern border gets overrun. That's how we have debt that's hanging around 100% of GDP. That's how we have a strategy of engagement in wars abroad that is rudderless. Because we basically have a political class that just tells us what we tell them. And that's what I'm asking for your help on. And I should provide a little more context here. I don't just come on the radio to hear myself talk. I'm genuinely interested in what you think and how we can figure out answers and then beat on the political class to be like, do it. Because I agree with you that our confidence has been shaken in critical institutions. Government writ large, the Department of Justice, how about Homeland Security? Tell me which government entity you're like, yeah, I think those guys are doing what's right and trying to help us out. I don't think I'm going to get a flood on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, of people coming out of the woodwork and telling me how much confidence they have in government, state, frankly, on the federal or state level. And that, to me, is the problem. Is you got a political class that's saying, you know what? Let us tell you the things that are bad. And they're all thermometers. They're all just telling us, and we're like nodding our heads and saying, yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Oh, preach. Go on. And then that's where the conversation stops. It's, well, yep, we have identified the problem. I can show you tome after tome of Congressional Research Service reports, budget charts, all kinds of things. Government Accountability Office has a million different reports saying, here's things that are wrong. That's literally part of their job. On the state level in Tennessee, I can point out, well, man, we have some really abysmal education outcomes in these certain areas. We got that grade system that comes out about the schools, and we're going to see that, oh, well, those schools got a bad grade. Well, that's a thing. And we need to get over this notion of politicians telling us things that we agree with is the same as them doing their job in any way that's effective. And you guys should be all over these folks, even the ones you like, especially the ones you like. Call Marsha Blackburn and say, we agree with you that the border's overrun. What are you going to do about it? Well, Joe Biden's bad. Well, we don't care. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to get a coalition of senators that work with the House and put something on Joe Biden's desk that he has to veto and hang that around his neck for the next election? How are you going to do that? What's the game plan? And frankly, folks got other stuff to do. They never get that far. And so the political class can get up and filibuster and just say, well, we agree with you that things are bad. And that drives me nuts. It should drive you nuts. Don't play that game. You know, that is, Frankly, a politician peeing in your ear and telling you it's raining, and you saying, it seems like it. It's a little wet. We got to stop that. Y'all aren't that stupid. The political class wants you to be that because it's easy. They want you to be dumb and afraid. Because when you're dumb and afraid, you let them get away with whatever they want. And as somebody who's worked, my background is I've worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I've worked I ran the House Intellectual Property Caucus. I was executive director of the House Republican Policy Committee. I've seen this stuff up close, folks, that when it comes down to it, the hard work of governing, building coalitions, coming up with a better plan is so easily replaced by just making you afraid. And you guys, like I said, should be all over your elected officials saying, what are you doing? No, I'm not asking how you feel. I'm asking, what are you doing to help me and my family? What is it? What are the policies that you're making sure that this tax burden is off me? What are you doing to make sure that my life is uninterrupted by your weird government stuff? What are you doing to make sure that, like, when I need stuff in the marketplace, that those businesses have the ability to provide it without some bureaucrat telling them why they can't? Like, that's the game plan, right? That's what we should want. And so I just want to encourage you guys to pick up the phone and call folks. And if they don't have good answers, find new folks. That I feel so strongly about that, and I think it's important. And some of you on the Super Talk text line have made a great point of, we want to flush it. We want to drain the swamp. We want to do all that. I agree. And replace it with what? Because that's always the work, right? Like, it's easy to say what you don't like. And I agree with you because I know what I don't like. So do you. Y'all are very clear about it. But then how do we get the thing? Like, what is it that we need? Which jobs need to be eliminated so you can have confidence in the justice system again? What is it that you need to regain what they've taken from you? And don't get me wrong. They have taken something from you. The political class has undermined, and when I say the political class, you can call it uniparty, you can call it whatever. It is the cohort of elected officials that like things to kind of just to be inertia, to just kind of keep rolling where they don't have to work too hard. And that they're the ones that are taking something from us. And that is confidence that we're going to get a fair shake, that we're going to have a chance, that the American dream is still attainable, and that if we work hard and do what's right, we can make a future for ourselves and our family. That's all frankly, that's all most people really want. They're not asking for government cheese. They just want a fair shot. And that, to me, is why we have to go really hold the political class to account. Is that they don't seem to get that. They don't understand. And the game that's being played that makes me upset, and I don't get upset about much, but what makes me really is the be afraid. Everything's, broken. Everything's bad. They're coming for you. The end is near. Did you know that I've personally gone through so many elections where if we lose the election, America will be over? I've been told that by members of Congress, senators, who have said, well, if Barack Obama if Mitt Romney loses to Barack Obama, then America is over. Well, if Donald Trump loses to Joe Biden, America is over. America's not over. Because we're always fighting for the future. And you guys are pointing that out. You guys are right. But my point is, make sure you're actually fighting for the future. Make sure you want to shape the future. Because here's what I know. And the reason that the projects that I work on are media, business, and public policy is because that's how the left attacks the culture to change it in the direction that they want. Like, don't kid yourself. There is a real battle going on. You're not being gaslit about a battle going on. It's just not about it. And I want to say this real clearly. There's some just things that are just distractions. Like, I want to absolutely figure out whether Joe Biden financially benefited from Hunter Biden's shady business dealings. I don't want weird books in schools that are inappropriate for kids. But what I really want is folks to solve the problems that matter to my daily life. Those are the things, and throwing out a lot of stuff to get you emotionally charged but distracted while kids aren't learning anything. Well, here's what I would ask. It's not either or, but think about it this way. Let's say we get the inappropriate books out of the classrooms, many of which are not in the classrooms in Tennessee, just to be blunt. Let's say we win there. Did we win in education? Well, you guys know the answer. It's no. Like we dealt with one thing. And so it takes a lot of bandwidth for a little momentum. Meanwhile, school choice is sort of like squishing around of saying, hey, maybe we can like upend the system. Maybe we can do it differently than we've done it before. And folks are like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, that's the big lift, right? Like that's the big thing. You know, it's the border. Well, you know, we've done hem and hawed and it's good and this is inappropriate and kids in cages and blah, blah. Secure the border. Have an orderly system of immigration. Not complicated. In terms of the goal, the execution, sure, it's always been complicated. But leaders lead and they get things done. And if they don't get things done, then you get new leaders. And what's happened is we've had generationally failed leadership. We've had one iteration after another of basically explaining why the thing can't be done. And it's always somebody else's fault, right? It's the White House's fault. Well, no, it wasn't the White House's fault because Congress wouldn't do a thing. Well, it wasn't Congress's fault because, well, the Senate wouldn't agree with the House. Congratulations. You've taught me 8th grade civics. I know how government works. Leaders lead. They get stuff done. They figure out how to bridge gaps. They figure out how to make concessions. I mean, it hurts me deeply to admit that John Fetterman is making sense when he's saying, oh, yeah, we should probably secure the border. That's not unreasonable. We should probably do that thing. And, oh, by the way, we should probably support Israel as well. And, oh, man, what if we said that support for, one, we need to have missional clarity with Israel and with Ukraine. And in exchange for having that and supporting those which we do have an interest in, we secure the border simultaneously because they're mutually reinforcing objectives. Seems like a good idea, right? Leaders get that stuff done. Everybody else just jaws. And you guys deserve better. I think that's where I get really frustrated is this notion that we accept such poor political leadership and say, I don't think we can do any better. Can we? I don't know. You know, folks turn to somebody like Donald Trump and say, well, he's the monkey wrench. He's the one that's going to break it and show everybody how terrible it is. Does anybody out there hearing the sound of my voice think anything's okay? No, of course not. We don't need to expose that it's broken. It's real broken. And frankly, Donald Trump has already done a good job saying, hey, look, we can shed a lot of these bureaucrats and nothing happens. We can shut things down in certain contexts and it's not a real loss. He's done a good job about that. Like that needed to be shown to be false. There was a narrative that was false. He broke it. Now it's broken. How do we want to fix it? What do we want to do? And who's going to help us or who's just going to sit there with us and tell us things are bad, things are bad, things are bad. Put on the poopy glasses. Things are bad. Like that's not inspirational. I mean, several of y'all have said, well, you're not excited about a presidential candidate. That means you like so-and-so, DeSantis or Haley or whatever. No, I'm saying this is uninspiring. This is below my expectations. And I don't understand why you guys or anyone would be okay with it. That's what we should be frustrated about is the failed leadership. I'm not going to clap for people that have an R next to their name because I do. Like if they're not doing the job, if they're not helping my family and helping the families in my community in ways that I can point to, then I'm going to keep voting for someone else. And at some point, I'll probably get fed up enough and I'll run myself. I mean, and I hope more of you guys do. I hope more of you guys think this isn't good, this isn't going to work, and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. Because there are way too many folks in the political class that the best job they've ever had is being in office. And if you see that, you know, I call on folks to do a lot of hard things. You know, foster parenting, whatever. Come on, help us out. We may need you. We need leadership because that's the problem. Every single thing on the Super Talk text line that y'all are mentioning, every call that y'all bring in, a lot of it, 90% of it is failed leadership. Well, you need to talk about that. When we come back from the break, that's something that I want to mention about, like, well, what do we actually want? What are the goals? If we want to have successful leadership, what is it that we want to see? I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Hey folks, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the biggest decisions people have to make in retirement is how to take Social Security. You'll get all kinds of workshops about that, and you'll see all kinds of things about that particular topic. Because Social Security, for some people, it might be a third or even more of their income in retirement. So you want to get this decision right. Well, how do you make the decision? Well, one of the things we look at, there are programs we use. This is one of the simpler programs that we use right here. And I want to just show you how it works and how it actually unravels some of the misconceptions we have about Social Security. So we have two people here, they're age 60, and they're looking at filing for Social Security. One person has a retirement benefit of $2,500. That is their main benefit from Social Security at their full retirement age. The other one has a $500 benefit. And what we can do here, which is kind of cool, is look at this and say, okay, well, what if we have this person has that life expectancy and that person has that life expectancy there? And then what we do is we assume a certain cost of living increase in Social Security. What would be the optimal for taking the benefit where they get the most benefit or the most bang from their buck? And where we see the star, that shows that we would have the best benefit. Now, this is one person filing at age 67, the other person at age 70. Well, a lot of people think, well, I retire, I have to take Social Security at the same time that I retire, and that's not necessarily the case. As you can see here, one may take it at one age and one may take it at another, even though they're the same age right now. Now, the other thing we can do is say, well, what if I took it early? What if I took it at this particular age right here, where one person's 65 and the other one's 65? You can actually see how much it could cost in benefits. When we do this, we can see how much it might cost us and how much it might affect us negatively to do that. Now, the other thing we can do is we can play around the life expectancies, and we say, well, if this person lives to that age, now the cost is $187,000 in this particular example, taking it at that age right there. So you can see, based on your own life expectancy, and typically people will say, well, what did my parents live to, and come up with that type of data. So this is just part of the financial planning process that we use at Paul Winkler Inc. If you want to know more about what we do, you can get a free 15-minute phone call at our website, paulwinkler.com. We do financial planning, full financial planning. We do investing, education, and investing. We actually help people through those decisions, helping them set up their 401ks and those types of decisions, as well as risk management. But we don't get paid on commission. That's what makes us so different from other firms out there that do what we do. So if you want to find out more, go to paulwinkler.com.
welcome back. Thank you guys for engaging. I really mean that. This is excellent. And I want to even read stuff that's uncomfortable on the Super Talk text line. I think this is important. I pose the question of, okay, so we see all this stuff that's going the wrong direction. What should we do? And 7889 said, good question. Most conservative talking heads are just like you. What you say is not untrue. It's just not the truth that needs to be told. I think what he's saying is the truth isn't sufficient. I see you guys as modern-day Paul Revere's, except that you're not sounding the alarm. I'm sounding the alarm right now. I'm telling you, our failed leadership and our acceptance of garbage is the problem. The political class has failed on so many fronts. And instead of actually saying, no, here's how we have to do that. We got to take our medicine and compromise on some things, and other things we hold our ground. It's very much an America First agenda insofar as America is more important than political party, than policy allegiance, or it is what's in America's best interests. I think that what we've done to ourselves is accept failed leadership and tried to convince us that it wasn't. We've tried to convince ourselves that. We've drank our own Kool-Aid and said, well, maybe it's okay. Like, maybe this is better. It's marginally better. No. We end up with two old guys yelling at each other. You know, I see the news report of, Joe Biden. Well, the Colorado ruling, Donald Trump, absolutely insurrection. Brr. Yay. I don't need some folks beyond the average American life expectancy telling me how we need to shape the future. I know that that's a hot take, but I really just don't think that we should build out policy at the whim of folks that aren't going to be there to see the future. I mean, it should be, how are we taking care of our families? How are we taking care of our communities? What is it that matters? And we should have a ridiculous focus on those things. And when somebody wants to take our focus off and be like, look, shiny thing over here. No, absolutely not. I mean, this is the entire story of public education. It's the okayest system that ever existed. It's, I say Soviet breadline, and I want to be real clear about this. There are some excellent teachers. There are some excellent principals. I can name them. I have engaged them because my family has a very interesting educational mix. We have kids that are in the public system that need a lot of different supports. We have kids in the private system that learn at a radically fast pace. We have a lot of different ways of educating in my family because it's about the kid in my family. We don't say this is the assembly line model and the same goes for everybody. It just doesn't. It doesn't work. It's a stupid model. And I get it. Some folks say we need a different educational system that is just better. Well, you can have different kinds of assembly lines, right? But the problem, and this is the problem over at DCS, this is the problem with any sort of bulk program that government has to offer, is that so much of it is context dependent. So much of it is, well, okay, what are the supports around this individual? Do they have parents? So when they go home, is there somebody helping them with their homework? Or are they going home and nobody's there? Are, kids, do they have the capacity to be on grade level? This community advancement stuff, or cohort advancement. Well, we just want to keep them with their cohort. No, I don't. If you can't read, I don't want you to keep going. I want you to learn to read. Well, that would burden the system because we'd have a lot more kids in third grade across the state of Tennessee who are trying to learn to read than the other grades, and it wouldn't be even. when I hear those type of things, you're explaining to me why we can't do what we need to do. And we need leaders that just say, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do the right thing and then go get everybody else on board. And I want to pivot a little bit to this topic. I know we're going to have to take a break here, but this is where I want to get on. And all of this is related, by the way. The system, the elites telling you what you can and can't support, the political class telling you what's good enough for you and what you can reasonably expect from them because, working and solving problems is hard. Well, in Tennessee, one of our big problems is public education, and we need to deal with it. And we need to be transparent about what's happening and where we need to go. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to tackle that, and I want your input. I'm Cameron Smith, and you're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
Today's show happened because I saw a comment. He said, why don't you do something on doves and dove fields and how to find them and things like that. So
yeah, all right.
Good idea. It's past opening day, but like you said, it can work.
Yeah.
Because the season is long. It runs for 90 days and there's 3 segments, so we're going to cover all that today. Let's rattle off the season. September 1 through September 28th is the first segment of Dove, and then October 14th through November 5th, and then December 8th through January 15th. 15 is your bag limit. So September 1 is opening day, and that's at noon in Tennessee.
September 1st has been one of those days. I mean, you'll see guys. I mean, they'll take off work. Have big cooking and getting together with friends, and it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
Historically, it's a huge social event. I'd say the majority of the hunters probably hunt opening day, opening weekend, and then won't pick up a shotgun until next year. So,
we have 2 other segments besides this one. Running in October, and then even all the way through was that January 15th. There's a lot of opportunity throughout the year.
On our website, tnwildlife.org, on our homepage, you can click the button there to dove hunting info and fields is what the button's titled. It's got all the information on dove hunting. You can find the fields there. So let's talk about how to find a field. You click on Region 2, it pulls up the options that are available, and get down to Bark Camp Barrens, and you see it's open statewide. So the hunting's not over there. There's still opportunity. Even though we had a big opening day, let it die down a little bit and get back in there. You're going to have some good hunting, I think, there, sounds like, anyway.
Welcome back. Thank you for listening. I'm Cameron Smith. We're having fun today, and you guys, man, y'all are on fire. For those of you watching online, you can see that I'm doing the face palm right now. One thing that kills me maybe more than anything is so-called conservative groups who find themselves shoulder to shoulder with teachers' unions, the left, Democrats, attacking Republican priorities because, they know something we don't. They've seen the grand conspiracies. This is beyond stupid, and I want to be real clear about it. Some of these groups that put out this stuff on school choice, I know why. Because when you lose an election to people that are actually shaping policy, there's a tendency to be butthurt. And there's a tendency to say, well, you just don't get it. The true conservatives get something, you don't. And so we think we're going to take pot shots at school choice because, well, I guess we want to stand with the Democrats. I don't know. I don't know what the game plan is here. But I saw this on Twitter. One of these groups threw this out. The more you dig, the more you understand what you're actually being sold. Talking about school choice. That we're leading with conspiracy. That's always a great sign that somebody's doing the right thing. The more you dig. I cannot stress enough that the same people that are working to destroy public education and make everything about racism are the very same people that are pushing school choice. It's an incestuous group. And the money flows from all of the same places. What? What? The people that are trying to destroy public education and make everything about racism, the people that are trying to create school choice are the same thing. That is dumb. This is not about parental choice. This is not about better education. This is an agenda. Private education will be the new government-funded public education. Buyer, beware. Really? When you look over your shoulder and you're defending the Soviet breadline of public education, and it's the teachers' unions and the Democrats are like, see, they're with us. They're with us. Maybe you're on the wrong side. Maybe you're not conservative. Maybe you're not standing for anything. Maybe it's just stand-up comedy. And I think we need to be real clear about this. Vouchers, school choice, different educational options are not magic. They're not. They don't solve everything for everybody. That's the Democrats' argument is if you can't solve everything for everybody, you can't solve anything for anyone. Let me say that again. If you can't solve everything for everyone, you can't solve anything for anyone. That is a failed loser mindset. And I'm talking to you as somebody who, in my own home, I have kids that life has not been kind to them. They are behind. They need all the help in the world. And I have kids that excel, and I have kids that are academically average. God made them that way, and that's okay. They have different abilities and different things like that. And the idea that one size fits all for them is just patently dumb. It's not supported by any research. It's not even supported by common sense. If you have kids, if you know kids, they're all different. They learn differently. We need to make sure our education system, because we're going to have public education, or at least publicly funded education. There is not a majority, even in Tennessee, that's like, what we should do is we should just not have any public education. That's not a thing. You can tell me public education is terrible. You can tell me you don't like it. You need to tell me we need to get rid of it, defund it, whatever you say. We're not. There will be some means of public education, particularly for minor children, in the state of Tennessee. Now, the question is, what does that look like? And if there's a pipeline and a bureaucracy that is ineffective for a wide range of kids, and that's the best we can do, and your answer is, well, we should probably just throw more money at it. If we threw $3 more billion, $7 more billion, $10 more billion, it'll fix. One, you're wrong. And two, that's the Democratic playbook. That's the Democratic, hey, this is how public education works. We say you're not sufficiently funding public education. We constantly move the goalposts to tell you what sufficiently funding public education is, and then we lecture you for failures to serve kids. That's how it works. I've experienced this everywhere I've gone in states across the country. That's what's happening here, okay? And to have purported conservative groups say, you know, that system is good. Or say, you know, don't worry about that system. We should just do private education. Meanwhile, private education is foreclosed to a lot of families because of economic means. And the concern is, well, the government's going to reach its tentacles into private education. Don't take their money. Don't take the vouchers. Don't participate in the program. I would absolutely impose a mandate that required private schools to take public dollars. But as long as we're transparent and we say, hey, if you take these voucher dollars and you accept kids, this is the terms on which you do that. That's how government works. And that's eyes wide open. And what you can choose whether you engage that or not. And some private schools will say, absolutely not. I don't want to have to do any testing or reporting or anything like that. I want the government out. Fine, I'll support you in that. But the idea that we should just wholesale cast shade on the governor's proposal to have this discussion and consider these options from conservative, that's not fair to say, well, conservative. No, it's self-proclaimed conservative. These folks that do this kind of stuff are the conservative Gnostics. In the Bible, the Gnostics were the ones that said, we have specialized knowledge. We know things that you don't know, and that's the way to salvation. Don't buy it. I've worked for a lot of conservative nonprofits, and I've worked for some good ones and some less great ones, and I've seen there's a tendency to do what keeps the lights on. And in this context, for the groups who claim to be conservative, to say, we actually are suspicious of any changes to public education because it might have an impact on private education. Well, tell me more about that. You mean students that couldn't go to certain schools might be able to go to certain schools? Tell me more about that. You wouldn't happen to mean families that skin looks like a different color. Like that's not what you wanted. Do we want to talk about this in a little more detail? Because we should be for maximizing opportunity, not foreclosing opportunity. When it comes to kids saying, we'll open the door, I understand. I actually understand critics of school choice measures of saying, well, it doesn't magically solve all the problems. No, but it gives parents a choice. They say, this is not working for my kid and I want to try something else. Now, I'd go a step farther. I'd want to have the opportunity, particularly in the public system, to do assessments for kids. And just so these conservative groups know, I've paid out of pocket to do some of these assessments for my own kids in the private context. I've had it done in the public context. They're very similar. And I can know, okay, how's my kid's reading comprehension, math processing, short-term memory, or working memory, that's what it's called. How do they stack up? Where are the areas that they need help in to learn? I think we should do that before we talk about any education reforms. Because if you don't empower parents with knowledge about how their kids learn, how do they know which school they need to go to? How? How could they possibly be able to figure it out in any coherent way to be able to make a decision? And I get it. Change is scary. Change is always going to be scary. But I think the idea for me is the public system and the positive aspects of that system that currently exists work towards the average. Call it the middle 50%. In the public education system, it works towards a mean. It's the average. We have this system and these processes for these kids in this range. And if you fall outside of that range, you get left behind or you get stunted. That's the truth. I've had kids that were grade levels behind, in one instance, years behind, and there was no game plan to bring him up to speed. There was no game plan, and it wasn't because people weren't nice. It wasn't because they were not kind or even competent. It was there was no system structures to help a kid in high school who couldn't really read catch up. Not really. And so if there were a private educational option that would work for that child to say, hey, we know life has dealt you a short hand and we're going to get you the support you need to have some basic functionality. I would have loved to have a private option that can be more narrowly tailored to those needs. And here's the thing. For all the critics say, well, the standardized test scores wouldn't be what. No. Some of these kids that are behind, it's about relative progress. It's not about whether I can take somebody that's a freshman in high school who can read on a second grade level and make them get to 10th grade. That's not the goal. It's whether I can get them to where they can read competently. They can have reading comprehension. So if you want to play the standardized test score game, it doesn't work for all the kids. It just doesn't. So get over it. There needs to be a game plan for, hey, how can we make sure that you have basic functionality to navigate life? That should be the game plan. And if that's in a private setting where there's a little bit more support and I've got a voucher that can help do that, then, man, that's a huge win. On the other end of the spectrum, if I've got a son that literally is teaching other kids, tutoring other kids. Like he gets through fourth grade, third grade? We get through most of the year very, very quickly. And he needed more of a challenge. He needed to be able to learn at his own pace. He currently has and needs an environment where he can consume knowledge quickly, synthesize it, and move on to the next task. The idea of grade levels to him is not a thing because he can learn quicker than most people, myself included. The public education model isn't targeted at him. Why should I be penalized? Why should he be penalized? Because God made him with a cool mind. He shouldn't. So a voucher that says, hey, this kid needs a different system, a private offering that has some challenging things that can really help him and stimulate him and keep him out of trouble. We all know that kids that don't have much stimulation and aren't engaged, they wind up getting into trouble. So, I mean, that's why this matters. That's why school choice matters. That's why different publicly funded educational options matter. And I don't want to deal with conservative types telling me, maybe the teachers' unions are right. Maybe Heidi Campbell's right. Maybe we just need to do what we're doing and hope it gets better. Maybe we need to just have some thoughts and prayers and wishes and not actually get smarter. I want to continue this conversation. I think it's important. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith filling in for Matt Murphy, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7. Time flies when you're having fun, and we are almost to the end of 2 hours. Tony, I see you on the educational system over there on the phone, and I'll try to get to you. You guys make a lot of sense. That when it comes to school choice and education, the status quo just doesn't work. And we can keep saying it doesn't work. We can keep saying things are failing. We can keep saying, again, this goes to the thermostat thermometer thing. Well, this is bad. Yep, it's bad. It's super bad. That's their thermometer. They're just telling you what you already know. And like I said, I don't mind calling out conservative groups behaving badly and doing stuff that doesn't make any sense. The reason that I'm not specifying the name of that group is because I don't actually want to give them any extra airtime to espouse their Looney Tune views. They can make their case, I'll make mine, but I think the issue here is opportunity for kids. Opportunity for kids. Do I think government cheese is great? Do I think government things are great? No. But I don't think this idea of if we have an effective school choice system, all the private schools die or get infected with wokeness. One of my good friends who's a congressional staffer, a guy by the name of William Smith, keeps saying this thing to me, and he's right, that if you keep looking for everybody else to raise your kids, you're going to get the results you don't want. And so when it comes to wokeness and all this or that, if my kids see some of that garbage, you know what they do? They come to me. They say, Dad, we saw this weird thing. What is it? And I think that's really important. I think we have to have those conversations. We need to raise our kids to stand in the evil day. And that's on us, right? And so we should be more involved. We should have more choices. We should have more like, hey, I think this might be better for my kids than this current offering. And I will tell you, and I want to call these schools out specifically. Nolensville High School has been excellent for my kids. The support there has been wonderful. Sunset Middle School, oh my goodness. They have done things to help my sons in ways few people probably would. I am not in any way saying that certain schools and certain educators can't be excellent, because I know that they can be. But when the overarching system is the priority, that's where I start the Soviet breadline thing, right? This is the way the system works. Put more cheese into the system, then you get better outputs. That's not true. That's not true, because not all public schools are created equal. And it's not just funding. It's the quality of teaching and the expectations. I can tell you something. At Nolensville High School, if we had garbage teachers, they wouldn't be there that long, because the parents would be like, not going to stand for that. My kid's got to get an education so they have an opportunity in the future. And we all know that that's true. If you got a good system, it's because parents care heavily. So why don't we empower parents more? Why doesn't that become the answer? We've got 1 hour left, and we got questions to answer about, well, what about the kids who have parents that don't care? Maybe it's not the kids that's the problem. Maybe it's the adults. We'll have to tune in and figure that out. This is Cameron Smith, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Two o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 54 degrees and partly cloudy in Nashville. Got a weather forecast coming up in 2 minutes. Israel has indicated that it may be ready for another humanitarian ceasefire in southern Gaza. The Israeli President Isaac Herzog says he wants to see more hostages come home, but that the responsibility lies squarely with Hamas. Anastela Katera is in Tel Aviv and says that the leader of Hamas is in talks with Egyptian officials about the conditions for another possible ceasefire.
A little bit of momentum building there, it seems, on both sides. We know that the Israelis, the head of the Israeli intelligence service, is meeting with the Qatari prime minister and with the CIA director Bill Burns in Warsaw. So, that I think is a good sign. Negotiations had up until now really hit an impasse, but they do appear to be picking back up.
And when it comes to Hamas, we do know their leader, Hanaya, is in Cairo as of today, along with a delegation of other officials there. Right now in Tennessee, a fourth person from Clarksville has now died after the tornadoes hit Middle Tennessee on December 9th. 79-year-old Penny Scroggins died due to injuries she got from the storm. Her mobile home got absolutely pummeled from those tornadoes. 3 other people died in Clarksville, including 10-year-old Arlen Cody, 59-year-old Donna Allen, and 34-year-old Stephen Hayes. And the U.S. Border Patrol is struggling to deal with the influx of migrants arriving to claim asylum along the U.S.-Mexico border. Here's Alex Stone with the latest data.
In camps that have developed along the U.S. side of the border and mainly remote places, the influx can be seen. Migrants camped out and waiting to be processed to claim asylum. The Border Patrol says it made about 10,500 apprehensions along the southwest border on Tuesday. That's down slightly from the 11,000 on Monday, but still at historic highs. The highest area being the Del Rio, Texas region, where about 4,400 apprehensions were made on Tuesday.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
It's the final countdown, the last hour, until tomorrow, and then the day after that. And then I'll have Chris Hand's show. I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 to noon next week. We're going to have some fun, though. First, Tony's been super patient. He wants to talk about education. We're going to get to him. Tony, my apologies for the delay. What you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on how you were talking about how you have a son who's like way more advanced than most kids his age. We have I have a fourth grader who has the same issue. Like, he was a straight A student in public schools, and then the way they teach Common Core in Tennessee, he's just bored, you know?
Sure.
And so we moved him out and put him in a private umbrella homeschool. And I know homeschooling is not necessarily for all families because, you know, you got to have somebody that stays home. And these days it's hard to live off one income.
Right.
But if you can do it, I recommend all parents in Tennessee to pull your kids out of public school, especially if they're those advanced type children, because they're going to do nothing but get held back.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Tony. I appreciate the call. And so I'll be transparent with you guys what we do. For us as a Christian family, we want biblical education to be part of the groundwork that our kids engage from a very young age. So scripture memory, knowing God's word, prayer in school, biblical knowledge, just understanding what the Bible says. That's important to us. And so we do a homeschool hybrid program. We work with, my wife actually teaches at New Song Christian Academy over in Franklin. And it's actually just run kind of like a college. So my kids are in a traditional classroom environment 2 days a week. They do the work on the other days. My wife proctors that, and that's how they learn. And so when they go to college, they will have already experienced an environment where they're responsible for their work on days they don't go to class. So we're really high on that. We love that. The faculty over there is great. The standards are extremely high. Expectations are high. We don't have a lot of the bullying is not a thing. That's taken very seriously. The discipline is in the interest of the child, but is also pretty consistent. Students know the deal and they respect it. It's not perfect, but it's a good environment. We also understand that this idea of conservative Christian enclave is not always what the environment our boys are going to be in. So my oldest son is at Nolensville High School, and it's a very, very different environment. And that doesn't mean it's a bad environment. It's just really different. And the educational supports have been great. I'll give you a good example. He got a pretty severe concussion playing football, and it slowed him down. And he needed a 504 plan to help him kind of get to where he could be caught up. And I'll be honest, it's been a rough freshman year, but he's done well, and he's had teachers and friends and other folks engage him well. Now, high school kids are weird anyway. I was. Probably a lot of you were. But what I've seen is that different educational options for different kids matter. Like, I have choices. And I shouldn't just have choices because of my level of income. I should have the capacity to be supported by the public education system in the state. And here's why. Because the public education in the state is designed so we have an educated citizenry. And as long as that's happening, that's what we care about. The idea that here's a system and it can only produce mediocre results is something we should reject. Our interest is in having educated citizens. And if you want to push back on the woke and all that stuff, first, I think that's a little squishy. You got to tell me what you mean. Like, is it the gender stuff? Is it, what is it? I mean, my son in high school as a freshman, they sent a notice home and say, hey, you can opt your kid out, but we're going to talk about, consent and sexual engagement. And I said, okay. And we talked about it. When he said, well, they said this, and this seemed kind of strange, and what about this? And we had a good conversation. I think those things are really, really important to discuss what's going on, what our kids are experiencing. And several of y'all have brought up on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, Well, what about the kids that don't have the parental supports? What about the parents who aren't going to critically evaluate educational options? What about kids that don't have the same opportunity as your kids? I think it's really important what happens to them. I had a boss in Congress, a guy named Jeff Davis from Kentucky. He said the measure of good public policy is the impact that it has on the working poor and elderly. He said, I would not have survived but for Social Security. He's not a big government guy. He's left Congress, but when he was there, he said, what's the impact that this policy has on the working poor, note working poor, and elderly? And that's a really effective measure. Yes, Bell, I see the red light.
Don't mean to derail the conversation, but there was some breaking news that Kevin McCarthy has officially resigned now.
Really?
Yeah.
He jumped the gun a little bit early. I thought it was going to be at the end of the year.
Now, apparently he's went ahead and done it. But anyway, back to school choice.
Yeah, well, we can have, what we should do? Everybody comment how sad you are that Kevin McCarthy has resigned. Oh, it's very short. We should go back to school choice now. As somebody who knows Kevin McCarthy, he's not a bad guy. He put his hand up in the air and tried to sense the way the winds were blowing all the time. And that's a terrible way to lead. I think that was his fatal flaw, is when you stand for something, people respect that. They may not always like you, but they respect that. Back to school choice. We have not taken any of this seriously over time. And by that, I mean education. We have to do something different than what we're doing now to get different results. That's common sense. That's the reality. I reject the notion that only people who have means should get anything other than government cheese. And it's also not fair. I mean, let's be honest. If you live in a high net worth area with high property taxes, your schools get funding from that. Typically, it also means that you've got parents who have some level of educational attainment. They've done well professionally to live in some of those areas. So, again, they're not all the same. And I just don't think, because publicly funded options need to treat people equally in terms of giving them opportunity and a baseline, that's already not happening in the current system. So the things that Democrats are saying they care about, of like equality for opportunity for everyone, it doesn't happen right now. And we need to be sober about that and say, okay, well, how can we remedy that in a way that's better for kids? And this is something that I've come around on because of our fostering, because we have sort of seen the different walks of life and the different families and the different things that impact children. That's a situation where we need to be sober about that, and we need to also say, okay, it's different for everybody. Why should this kid have less opportunity than my kids? Because nobody really wants to admit that, but they're looking out for their own, right? They're saying, I need to get my opportunity and protect that for my kids and their future. And then what happens to other people doesn't matter. Well, yeah, let me tell you, it does. Some of the kids that are in the foster system right now, that some of the things that they've been through that have impacted them, they are on a trajectory to be a challenge for the public in the future, whether that's criminal challenges, whether it's they don't know anything, they don't have the educational attainment to hold down a job, they can't do a lot of stuff. This myth of there's a world in which you don't have to pay for it is just false. You're going to have to pay for it one way or another. Either you're going to engage and do well and do right by folks early when you can make those interventions, or you're going to pay for it on the back end in terms of higher crime, bigger social safety nets, bigger agency budgets. So don't let somebody lie to you and say, well, hey, we just won't worry about it now and we'll never have to worry about it. That's not how government works. That's not how policy works. And so I get it that education is really sensitive. Some of the ideas that folks throw out there are just do not compute. In my community, whenever there's a discussion about, well, are apartment homes coming in? Well, that could create more population density. That could mean more kids in the schools. It can be more overcrowding. And sure, it can mean a lot of things. But trying to figure out the right way to produce results for children and having a maniacal focus on that versus the system writ large. I want teachers to do well. I want coaches to do well. I want them to have opportunities, but the job is to educate and provide opportunity for children. That's the thing. If you do that well, I want to support you. I want to pay you. I want you to have the benefits. I want you to have a great lifestyle. But when those results aren't there and you're not doing the job well, we need to move along and find some folks who can do the job. And the idea that, well, I can only care about the schools that my kids are zoned for and can't care about what's happening to kids in Davidson County, can't care about kids in Rutherford County, can't care about kids in Shelby County and places all over the state of Tennessee. Well, that's the problem. If you're just looking out for you and yours and not anybody else, it won't work. It won't work. And so school choice, I do think, is important. It's a discussion we should have. We should have a good faith. The idea that there's only one way to do this and do it right, it's false. We got to try things when they work. That's great. A couple of y'all have made some points that I do want to address. I'll start right now, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll kind of get into it. I think we talk about a cultural failure of leadership in politics. We've talked about failures in education, that we need better options. One of the things that I want to talk about is a failure at home. I think a lot of y'all are sitting on the potty watching TikTok all day. I think that we are not doing a good job of raising children that can be those leaders, the ones we need, that can solve the problems. And I'll tell you one thing that's been encouraging to me is a lot of church men's groups and groups that I've been around are pretty terrible. It's sitting around, kind of being late, having conversations about nothing meaningful, nothing. Over the last little bit, I've been part of a men's group. We start at 6 Tuesday morning. We end at 7. We are on time. We get through it. We have an agenda. And one of the points of emphasis that some of these godly men have made that I think is just really, really important is that you must have physical, mental, and spiritual goals. Must have. Most of us just kind of go around our lives doing a whole lot of random stuff, and then we die. But until we kind of take it seriously and figure out, hey, what do we actually want? How are we going to do that? What does it look like? Then we start getting on the track to, okay, well, what about accountability? Now, businesses who succeed do this all the time. They have goals, key performance indicators. They can figure out what's the target. Did we hit the target? What did we do that caused us to miss the target? How do we get better? That's stuff that fascinates me, that I engage, that's a big part of what I do professionally. But we got to do that personally. If you want to change things in education and politics, you got to start with some of that. We got to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about what that looks like. And I want to get your thoughts. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show, and this is Super Talk 99.7.
Migrant crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border reaching historic numbers. We'll talk about that, plus an RV fire in Tennessee. 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Man, y'all, it's been fun. It's been a great afternoon. We'll do it again tomorrow and Friday, and then a little bit in the morning next week, and then I'll be back to my regular spot with Matt Wednesday afternoons and filling in as the need arises. I want to get back to this point of having some goals. So this was kind of a weird thing. I went to a church, men's church thing at church at Nolensville, and it got my attention because it made me think a little bit differently. It was actually really different because I don't know if the speaker said looked like his son-in-law that he didn't like or something, but it definitely got my attention. The point is, we're looking at a lot of the faith stuff wrong. And what I mean by that is in every area of our lives, we put a super premium, right? Like we got to make the dollar. We got to get things right at work. We got to, look good. We got to do some. But then when it comes to our faith, you guys can tell me on the Super Talk text line what the key performance indicators are for church. But I'd tell you, a lot of churches don't know. How do you know whether you're a good church or a bad church? Whether you're honoring God or you're failing? And I can tell you, as a dude that has been asked to do a lot of different Bible studies and stuff like that, a lot of them are lame. Like, they're just weird. Like, the Bible's not complicated. Read the Bible. Do what it says. When you screw up, repent, turn, and don't be like a dog eating his own vomit. The Bible says that. And I think that we've accepted failure on so many fronts, political, educational, and man, on spiritual stuff too. There's been a real problem. The Bible says if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Seems pretty straightforward. The wages of sin is death. The free gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. Again, pretty basic. Now, here's the problem. If you don't have goals in each of the aspects of your life, how do you know whether you're living well? How do you know whether you're making progress? And meeting with these guys on Tuesday mornings has really helped me kind of think through some of that stuff of, man, this makes sense. I do some of that stuff, particularly in the professional space, and I'd started to do it in the physical space, but in the spiritual space, a little squishier. And this has taught me we got to do this. Not only do we got to do this, we got to teach our kids how to do it. How many of y'all have gone to your kids and said, what are your educational goals? What do you want to learn? What do you want to know how to do that you don't now? You get a lot of, physical goals. What do you want to do? And I'll give you specific examples. For me, one of my mental or professional goals was I wanted to make a movie a year over a 3-year period. 1 year down. Check. Man, we got to figure out what's next. We got stuff in development, but I need to get it done. And if I don't get it done, why didn't I get it done? A physical goal. I wanted to be able to bench press 350 pounds by Christmas of this year. I can do that now. Now, I look like a hairless lowland mountain gorilla, but man, it feels good to set a goal and accomplish it. And if you don't accomplish it, why not? And then try to figure it out. And then spiritually, one of the goals for my family was read the whole Bible in a year. And we just got through 3 John. We're getting close. We're going to get it done. And all that is to say that you can do that too. And if we want to change some of this stuff, if we don't like the way things are going, which a lot of you don't, I can see it on the Super Talk text line, I know. We can say that it's not going well, or we can say, well, What do we need to start changing? What are our goals? And who do we need in our camp to help us achieve those things? You know, our men's group with the iron sharpens iron, it's, well, what makes you better? What makes you stronger? You know, in the Bible, you talk about a friend that's closer than a brother. You talk about David and Jonathan, Paul and Silas. Like, we can go down like all the folks that were close. One of the best jokes I've heard recently is one of Jesus' biggest miracles was having that many friends when he was an adult. And I think that if we want to change the world, you got to start by changing yourself. We got to start by saying we got goals. We know how to achieve goals. We know how to diagnose when we fail. And to be clear, if you're not setting a goal you could possibly fail, it's a crappy goal. Like, you need to have that. I need to have that. And I think that's something that we can all kind of start that process. It does not have to be complicated. You don't need a giant system. You need a piece of paper and a pencil. Mental, physical, spiritual. What's the goal? What's the time range? And how am I going to do it? Cool. Now teach your kids how to do it. Hold them accountable. Show them your goals. Be accountable to them. That's tough because most of us don't like the idea that we might not be good, that we might not be as active as we thought. We might not be the things we want. Well, here's the problem. Everybody wants to be awesome. Very few people want to work. Very few people want to do what it takes. That's the problem with the education system. Immigration, just pick your thing. Everybody knows what the problem is. We can talk about what the problem is. Very few people want to solve the problem. They want to say, well, our goal is to reduce immigration levels. Here we go. Here's a good goal. Fiscal year 2023, apprehensions at the southwest land border, 2.475 million. 2.475 million. Okay, that is a thing. But what are we going to do about it? What's the game plan? And that is where it's tough. 2.475 million. I'll read out real quick before we take a break. The states with a population below that: New Mexico, Nebraska, Idaho, West Virginia, Hawaii, New Hampshire, Maine, Montana, Rhode Island, Delaware, South Dakota, North Dakota, Alaska, District of Columbia, Vermont, and Wyoming. All have a lower population than the people that were apprehended on the southwest land border. We got a problem. So we got a goal to fix. What is that goal? And how are we going to do it? That's what we got to figure out. We also need to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
.231, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 52 degrees in Nashville. Partly sunny, partly cloudy on Music Row. Full weather forecast coming up in 2 minutes. Starting at the southern border, migrant crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border reaching historic numbers. U.S. Border Patrol agents made more than 10,000 apprehensions along the southwest border yesterday alone. A slight decline from the roughly 11,000 apprehensions made just the day before. The migrant surge now overwhelming border crossings near major cities and in remote areas. Maria Villarreal is at the border crossing in Eagle Pass, Texas.
We just saw a situation unfold in front of us where somebody needed medical attention. And the problem behind us is this is sort of a no man's land. It is a property that is owned by the city, but Border Patrol is being allowed to use it. And because of that, there is really nobody taking true liability of any sort of medical issues that happen. Things like food, water, basic necessities, that's all being handled by nonprofit organizations. So really, it's sort of a mess down here right now.
And Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez of Texas says the border communities are just overwhelmed. He says, imagine something happens to you, you dial 911. You can't go to the hospital because there's no bed and there's no one to take care of you. Right now in Tennessee, Channel 4 says that a man was found dead inside of an RV this morning. The RV had caught fire. Officials were notified around 4 a.m., and when they arrived, it was already fully engulfed in flames. Once it was put out, they found a dead 47-year-old man inside. Officials now investigating the cause of that fire. In the nation's capital, former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy of California has submitted his official resignation from Congress effective December 31st. He said he plans to stay involved in recruiting and mentoring candidates. That is the latest news. Weather forecast coming up next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Today's show happened because I saw a comment. He said, "Why don't you do something on doves and dove fields and how to find them and things like that?" So
yeah, all right,
good idea. It's past opening day, but like you said, it can work.
Yeah,
because the season is long. It runs for 90 days, and there's 3 segments, so we're going to cover all that today. Let's rattle off the season. September 1 through September 28th is the first segment of Dove, and then October 14th through November 5th, and then December 8th through January 15th. 15 is your bag limit. So September 1 is opening day, and that's at noon in Tennessee.
September 1st has been one of those days. I mean, you'll see guys. I mean, they'll take off work. Have big cooking and getting together with friends, and it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah.
Historically, it's a huge social event. I'd say the majority of the hunters probably hunt opening day, opening weekend, and then won't pick up a shotgun until next year. So,
we have 2 other segments besides this one. Running in October, and then even all the way through was that January 15th. There's a lot of opportunity throughout the year.
On our website, tnwildlife.org, on our homepage, you can click the button there to dove hunting info and fields is what the button's titled. It's got all the information on dove hunting. You can find the fields there. So let's talk about how to find a field. You click on Region 2, it pulls up the options that are available, and get down to Bark Camp Barrens, and you see it's open statewide. So the hunting's not over there. There's still opportunity. Even though we had a big opening day, let it die down a little bit and get back in there. You're going to have some good hunting, I think, there, sounds like, anyway.
Welcome back. I'm Cameron Smith. Thank you guys for engaging today. We're wrapping out the hour, and talking a little bit about goals and how setting those goals, mental, physical, spiritual, impacts us, impacts our kids. And that's what helps produce the leaders for education, for politics, for the things we care about. It's the people who have the capacity to do the things that need to get done. There is no substitute for human effort. And being willing to be honest about that stuff. I'm telling you, I want to respect, obviously, the privacy of the guys that I hang out with, but I will tell you, just the honesty and how they engage each other has been refreshing. The idea that I don't have to put on a fancy face. I don't have to say, everything's going well. I'm fine. Everything's great. I can just tell them the truth. They'll say, hey, well, what about this? Have you thought about this? They'll encourage me. A little text message here and there. Grab coffee from time to time. It's something that I think a lot of, particularly dudes, fail at. Myself included, because I have a tendency to be like, I'm not even sure I like you. I kind of can be a little curmudgeon-y sometimes, and finding reasons not to get together. You just need to do it. Eat your broccoli, take your medicine, have a community around you, because that's what's made us really weird, is we think we have relationships, but we have curated things on social media. If you go look at my Instagram, or you go look at D. Cameron Smith on Twitter, you're going to see a lot of things in the political space about, the Supreme Court in Colorado, their ruling, the latest polling, that's a funny thing. We can imagine a future unburdened by what has been from Vice President Harris. You see that stuff. But I choose that. Like, I curate that. I whether I admit it or not, we all do that, right? There's a degree of separation, and so we imagine that we have thousands of relationships and all these people and all this engagement, and we really don't. A lot of us are just kind of lonely. And then it makes us feel like you can have those like awful internet interactions, and you can yell and holler and be weird, because nothing really matters. And I'll say having friends is actually kind of matters. Like real ones, like in the world that you actually talk to regularly. And, one of the things that this group of guys has done well is just freaking show up on time and do it. Well, what about the holidays? What about other things? The one that I missed was because I was literally barfing. I was dying. But by and large, don't miss. Like, commit, engage. Just think about that stuff. I don't want to get too preachy on it, but if you don't have a goal and you don't have a target, how you ever know if you hit it? And that's what's happening in our political space. We've got a lot of folks that don't know what a target looks like. Like, I can give you the information about the problem, but trying to figure out of what does a secure border look like? Well, I've said 2.475 million encounters in fiscal 23. Okay, does that need to be 1 million? And 500,000? What should it be? What is the right target, and what are the things that we can do to reduce that number towards the goal that we want to reach? It's not rocket science, but you have to have that goal and say, oh, we want that next number in fiscal 24 to be 1.75 million. And then in 25 to be 1.25 million. And then in 26 to be 1. I don't know. I haven't dug in on this thing, but find the goal and then figure out how we get there. And what that looks like practically is, okay, Congress, y'all have absolutely failed to do anything useful on immigration in decades. What does this look like from a bipartisan standpoint? And not bipartisan for bipartisan's sake. What does it look like for practically being able to address the objective? Come up with a target, because I don't actually believe the Democrats look at that number and say, everything's fine. They may try to like cover over it for political purposes and say, we're offended that people would suggest we don't have control. Well, you pretty clearly don't. And so that's the sobriety. It's the honesty about what we're dealing with. You see Democrat like John Fetterman and other folks kind of being honest about it and saying, we should probably figure this out. And that's what we need. And then we can march towards that, right? That's an objective thing that we need to do. Okay, I don't like wokeness in schools. Okay, well, what do I want to do? I want to focus on improving. You know how you address wokeness in schools? You focus on improving academic output. And then the things that aren't critical to that goal fall by the wayside. That's how you do it. You say, well, here's the problem. Kids can't read by third grade. Well, then we don't advance them. Well, we got some logistics. We got other problems we got to do to get this goal. Beth's been waiting to talk about reading. We got a few minutes before you have to take a break. Beth, tell me about reading.
Okay. My child was in second grade. I had always sat down and listened to her read the books, first and second grade. In second grade, we were reading, and we turned the page, and she missed the word. I'm like, no, you missed that word. What is that word? And so she read it. She looked at it. I don't know that word. I turned back to the page before, and I said, it was in this page. What was this word on this page? She didn't know the word. She'd been memorizing the whole storybook, and she could just cite it and say the words as we turned the page. Well, I caught that, So I got index cards. We wrote out the alphabet on the one per card. She made sure she knew her alphabet. Then we started writing words on the alphabet cards, on the back of the cards. And she learned all the little words, the simple words, then longer words, then compound words. And then during the summer, we got Little House on the Prairie and the Black Stallion, because the assigned reading things they had for school was boring, and it was not interesting. So she read all the whole series Little House on the Prairie and whole series Little Black Stallion. And in the school library, you can get books on history like Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone that are written for grade levels. And you can get, all kind of westerns. You can get horses. You can get books on adventures, things that will interest the kid, and they will be interested in sitting down and reading. And when she went to college, she was in the top 3% of readers.
Wow.
So this is something that every parent can do, because I don't have a teaching degree. I don't have a college degree, but I could read, and we made sure that she learned to read, and all those little books that they could order in elementary school, she could order so many dollars worth of little books each time, and so she ordered what she was interested in. Now, this might help your child that reads at second grade level in high school. Just go back and get some of those adventure stories, something that he might be interested in, and let him learn at that level and master the second grade readers and then the third grade, and just he can improve on his own by, y'all help him with the words that he doesn't know. And, just start out and see what he knows and what he doesn't know, and he can learn to read. You already said he's reading at second grade level. Well, he's ahead of where she was, because she wasn't reading. She was memorizing. So, parents, you can do it by, you don't have to have a degree or a trained teacher. If you want to learn phonics, though, you might need a trained teacher, because my other child, they had phonics, and I had a hard time with that. But anyway, I just want to encourage you to a way that you might be able to help your freshmen in high school.
Well, thank you, Beth. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the call. And, sounds like you're an incredible mom. I think that you're right. And, y'all are going to think I'm real old school for this, but when we read the Bible at home, we read it at night after dinner, I make the boys read out loud. And some of them don't want to, because they're not as strong as a reader as others. My newest addition to the house really didn't like to read. he's fine at sounding out the words. He could do it. And one of my other sons, he was kind of giggling, and he was telling me how he could pronounce all the words. So I said, okay. And I opened up to the book of Numbers with some of the genealogies with some very exotic names. And my oldest stopped laughing, because the truth is, the embarrassment of admitting that we don't know holds back more learning than anything else. I can't read great. I don't know how to read out loud. I can't speak publicly. Like, all these things happen, and then folks don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be honest. And in my house, you got to be able to stand and deliver. And we're not going to make fun of anybody.
I don't read gooder.
Yeah, I don't read gooder. You know what I did to him the other day? My Cam, I call him the Beast, my oldest, was reading Shakespeare for school. And so in the kitchen, I said, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. Is already sick and pale with grief, that thou her maid art far more fair than she."
That's not Shakespeare.
Yes, it is.
That's Charles Winchester from MASH.
But the fact that I had to memorize Shakespeare in high school and I could still remember it, my son was like, well, if my dad had to know it, I guess it's okay. And I could do it off the top of my head. And I think that's what we need to kind of start expecting is, hey, come on, let's our kids can do a little more. Like, be able to read out loud, be able to do this. And when you can't, we're not making fun of you. You're not bad. You're not anything other than somebody that needs to keep learning. And I think that's where, if you want to see success across the board, we got to kill this notion of automatic promotions. We got to kill this idea that, well, a kid, we don't want them to feel bad about themselves. You know what makes you feel worse than anything? When you're in like 5th, 6th, 9th, 10th grade and you can't read. I would much rather be a little older than my peers and be able to read and to know and to learn than be the exact same age and be way behind. And that is a reality that I understand that there are a lot of psychologists and other folks that talk about the detrimental impact of that, but it's against the wrong baseline. The wrong baseline needs to be what I've seen firsthand, which is kids that are way further behind than they should be because they didn't have somebody that helped them learn what they needed to learn. We got to take a break, and then we'll wrap up the show. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7. And we're back. To wind things down, if there's one man that I felt could probably quote Shakespeare off the top of his head, it'd be Brian Wilson.
Sound and fury, signifying nothing. One of my favorite quotes from the Bard.
For me, it's the St. Crispin's Day speech. That one still, it rocks and rolls for me out of Hamlet. I think, was that King Henry V? I can't remember. Either way, love that speech.
You know, in my hometown of Odessa, Texas, you would not believe this, but there is an accurate reproduction of the original Globe Theater. And Odessa, Texas throws a Shakespeare festival every year.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was, I can't believe I said that was Hamlet. I was thinking Kenneth Branagh, but it's Henry V. And the St. Crispin's Day speech, I like having to memorize these chunks of things, memorize biblical stuff, scripture memory, that kind of thing, was just part of my education, and a lot of that's just gone now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I can't memorize anything. I once was asked to be in a movie, and the thought of repeating words that made no sense to me and memorizing them was incredibly hard. And they actually cut me from the movie.
Really?
Yeah. I was playing a reporter, and I was supposed to be saying these words that no reporter would ever say. And so they gave it to another reporter, but I still got paid for it. And by the way, every so often I get a check for $4 for my appearance in a movie that they cut me out of.
That's amazing.
Isn't that weird?
That's pretty awesome. What you got on deck for today?
Big show. I mean, there's two things that I'm going to focus on today in a huge way. This unbelievable decision from the Colorado Supreme Court. And to that end, we'll have Senator Bill Hagerty on a little bit later in the show. We'll start with that, and then he will join us at 4:05. And then the border situation, it just gets worse and worse every day. You think it can't get any worse, but it does. And the person on Capitol Hill responsible for oversight of what's happening on the border and what the Homeland Security Department is or is not doing is Representative Mark Green, of Congressman from Tennessee, and he's going to join me at 3:35. So a full-on show here today where this is one of those days, honestly, Cameron, where I want people to sort of set in and just sit back and stay with us for a while, because we're going to do some deep dive on those two topics.
Well, and before I got to go, tell me one of your Christmas traditions. That's something I didn't get to today. I need to know what yours are.
Well, I had one with my daughter that I just adored. I thought it was fun. We just sort of came up with it. And the thing was, I said, every night at Christmas Eve, we would go out on the porch of the house and call the reindeer, Santa's reindeer, so that they could find us. And we would take pots and pans or whatever we could, bells, whatever we had around the house that would make noise. And we would go out onto the front porch and call the reindeer.
That is
awesome.
awesome.
And she said, but Dad, they're a long way away. And I said, they have great hearing, honey. Great hearing.
It begs the question, what sound does a reindeer make?
Well, I don't know. They don't make but they could hear us calling them. And so it was pretty sure that when she went to bed that they were going to find us.
Man, that's
by
awesome.
Christmas morning, yeah.
Well, and everybody on the Super Talk text line now wants to know what the movie is that you were in.
Oh, it was Murder at 1600 with Wesley Snipes.
Wow.
But I wasn't in it.
in that?
I don't know, because I never watched it since I knew I wasn't in it. But they still send me a nice little check every so often.
I don't know. If you were in Blade, I would have been impressed. The other Wesley Snipes movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, Brian's got an exciting show for you guys. Some fantastic guests who are in the know, who understand what's going on. Y'all have been great to me today. I'll see you tomorrow, noon to 3. I'm Cameron Smith, filling in for Matt Murphy, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.